Alright guys, so today we're going to start talking about JavaScript, just an introduction. Now, I'm going to be going really slowly. I'm not going to introduce a ton of material in this first week for the introduction because you're going to find once you get to be kind of a full-fledged front-end web developer that JavaScript is most of what is going on the front end. So out of the three layers, which are the HTML layer, the content layer, CSS, the design layer, and JavaScript, the behavior layer, most of that, really the vast majority of it is all behavior, JavaScript. So, if I had to say, I would say JavaScript is probably an order of magnitude bigger and more complicated than CSS. So, as complicated and in-depth as CSS can get, JavaScript just totally blows it away. It's its own programming language. It's ubiquitous. Everybody uses it everywhere. Not only on the front end, but also, some people on their servers, they're compiling JavaScript and running it. Anyway, the point being is that got to be careful that I don't get too ambitious here in just the first week of introducing JavaScript, because probably more than half of this class is going to be talking about JavaScript, jQuery, even Angular, which is kind of taking JavaScript and building a framework around it. There's just so much JavaScript that we're going to be going into. So I'm just kind of giving a warning that we're going to start slow. So don't get upset if you already know a lot of JavaScript and we don't get into a lot of the horrible details. So just to start off, let me show you how to get started. Just like with our CSS, I'm going to just create a file where we're going to store all of our scripts. So I'm going to create a notepad here, and I'm going to save it in our folder. Obviously you can see we're starting where we left off with our styled simple page. So I'm going to just drop it right in there, and I'm going to call it scripts.js. Now, someday when you have a more complicated site, you might have multiple JavaScript files, and they all have different names, maybe one for each page. But for now, we're just going to dump that one in there, called styles. And it's very easy to link your scripts into your HTML. You just go ahead and open up your HTML, and this time in the body, this always confuses me because I always forget whether it's CSS or JavaScript that gets linked in the head or the body, but the JavaScript tag actually goes in the body. It's just a plain old script tag, so begin script, end script, and you only need one attribute, and it's called the source. So that's the name of your file, scripts.js. So that would do it. Now our files, the HTML file and the JavaScript file, are linked together. But the JavaScript file is empty. So there's different things you can do in JavaScript. Some of it involves using stuff that's built into the language, and some of it involves writing your own stuff, obviously, like any programming language. JavaScript is a really hard programming language to teach. I think one of the hardest, because you kind of have the option to do object-oriented programming or not. You can write functions or not. You can scope things really tightly. You can just spew it all over the place, one line after the other. It's really JavaScript lets you do anything you want. It's really, you get a lot of freedom with it. So just to start off, I'm going to show you just kind of doing something just without kind of creating any structure or foundation. I'm just going to declare a variable. So I'll say var x equals 5. Right? That doesn't look like it should work because it's just this line of code right in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't give you any scope or context or anything, but it will work. So, and now I'm going to invoke a method that's built into the JavaScript language called alert. And if you pass the alert function anything, like a value, in this case a variable value, hopefully it will pop up the value of the variable that I declared on the screen. So at this point I have two lines of code. The first line says declare a variable named x and give it the value of 5. And the second line of code is an invocation of the JavaScript alert function. It takes one parameter, and that's the value that you want to print on the screen. So if I refresh my page over here, I should see a pop-up that says 5. So you might ask yourself, well, how did that happen? Well, it's really as simple as in our HTML file we've said, hey, this script tag says I want to go into this file and start executing all of the script that I have there. Now, you can do instead of putting the source attribute on the script, you can start writing any kind of script you want right in the middle of the HTML, but don't do that. So it's not that, I'm not really sure. For a smaller application, maybe it doesn't matter that much. You can just write your script right in the middle of the HTML, but we've been talking about the separation of the layers, making sure you put all of your behavior in the JavaScript layer and all of your presentation in the CSS layer. You want to keep the HTML, the content layer, as small as possible, or else you're going to have real big problems once you start to have multiple pages and the pages are huge. It's very rare in the software industry that you're going to make a change that's just in one little place. Most of the big features that are introduced are going to be like, on these 17 pages or in this collection of pages we want to change this style or this brand or this behavior. So you really want to keep out of the HTML file if you can, and just go into the CSS layer and the JavaScript layer, because those provide you with a lot of selection and queryability so that you can do more programmatic and surgical changes across a very broad and large spectrum of content, instead of opening up one HTML file and changing what's going on. You really don't want to do that. So that's why I said most of the stuff you're going to be doing is CSS and even more JavaScript. So here we have a very simple example, and this is happening right when I load the page. So I guess the other thing I'm going to show you how to do is, well, what if you want to do something that doesn't happen right when the page loads? You kind of want to save it for later. Well, again, you can kind of just write a function right in the middle of the code here. You can say function, let's call it blah, and this is just like any C# or C++ or any other language function. The difference really is you don't specify a return type, or even if it has one, because JavaScript is a dynamic language, so it kind of is very forgiving and allows you to specify those things on the fly, so you don't have to predefine if or what the return type is. So in this case, blah, I can say I want it to do something simple, so I'll just do exactly what I did before. I'll say var x equals 5, and then alert x. Now let's make it more interesting. We'll just pass in a parameter, and then I'll alert it. So now I have a function called blah that takes one parameter, and then whatever I pass to it is going to alert it. So I'm going to get rid of this here because this was code that was just running in line, one line at a time. But a function isn't going to write, or isn't going to execute when it reads this. It's going to say, okay, I've defined a function called blah. So it's not going to execute this. It's just going to define it and then save it. So in order to execute this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something in my HTML which is an event, and at that point I'm going to say, at this event I want to run that function. So I'll find something really obvious, like the big picture of flow. Where is it? Flow, flow, flow. There you are. So this flow image right here. So what I can do is I can put an event on. I can say on click equals, and then the value of this attribute is going to be the invocation of my function. So literally I say blah, and I can pass it anything. I say 1, 2, 3. So as simple as that, I can, it's not going to invoke my function until I click this element. So this element is literally wired up with an event that says, okay, if anybody clicks on me, I'm going to invoke this function and pass the value of 1, 2, 3 to it. So back here, refresh the page, click on flow, and I see 1, 2, 3. So that's kind of the setup on how JavaScript works for the first video. The one thing I do want to show you that's really cool is in Google Chrome. If you go to inspect element, and if you click on, instead of looking at what we've been looking at here, if you click on sources, and this little thing here will hide the drawer. You don't want to see that right now. So if you click on scripts.js, which is what we've been looking at, I'm going to expand this so you can see more. Now we've got our own little debugger here, so I can actually click right there on the 3 and put a breakpoint, and now when I click flow, it's going to hit my breakpoint, and before it even invoked the alert method, I can hover over the X and see that it has the value of 1, 2, 3. So Chrome comes with an entire JavaScript debugging environment, which is, needless to say, crucial. It's almost impossible to figure out what problems are going on in your JavaScript without something like this. So again, use Google Chrome. It's awesome. Alright, so that's pretty much what I wanted to start with, and moving on in the next couple of sections I'm going to show some of the more advanced techniques which are really going to expose some of the problems with just raw JavaScript, which is going to lead into why we have things like jQuery and Angular, because JavaScript alone presents it's some problems that those things really fixed. So I'm going to show you some of the right way to do things, and on purpose I'm going to show you some of the wrong way to do something, so that when we get to jQuery, you'll be able to see, oh, that's much better than what we were doing before. So moving on, we'll get into some of those things.